Cosplaying is pretty common online. It's grown to be a pretty widely enjoyed hobby. However, not everyone in that community is an angel, not even close. A select few of them are much darker than all of the others though, like Melissa Turner, better known as Two Thorned Rose. Right now, I would like to thank the sponsor of today's video, Incogni. This is because lately I've been trying to find someone who can get all of my data off of these big marketing databases that I've never consented to being on. It's very hard to find a solid, definitive list of all of these companies that take your data and spread them all over the internet. Not only that, there have been numerous data breaches from different platforms over the years that have only been leaking out data and gradually adding to the problem. Requesting to be removed off of all of these could take you years to do manually. That's where Incogni comes in. You can just make an account on Incogni and they will send a data protection law compliance request to all of these different companies and demand that they remove all of your data from these different companies' databases. The US in particular has a big data privacy problem, that being those people search sites. These websites create detailed personal profiles of you and publish them online for anyone to see. This can expose you and your loved ones to anything from scams to identity theft to even online harassment and stalking. Just try Googling yourself. Give it your full name, city, and state. You'll be surprised at how many sites publicly share your private information. But Incogni's custom removals can put a stop to that. Just point them to wherever your data is being exposed and their privacy experts will handle the rest. Incogni's easy. Just make an account, give them the right to work on your behalf, and let them get to work. Take back your personal data with Incogni. Just use code DIRETRIP at the description below and get 60% off of an annual plan. And now, back to the content. While we've talked about many different subcultures on this channel before, we haven't really gotten into the topic of cosplay before. Of course, there's nothing wrong with cosplay in and of itself, but once you're exposed to these larger communities online, it's only a matter of time when you start to see the seedier underbelly of them. You could say that this case really exposed some of that. Melissa Rose Turner was born on November 25, 1992 in North Carolina, mostly growing up both there and in Florida. She was said to have been a part of a pretty big family that was largely supportive, but still not too happy. She claims that she suffered some abuse at the hands of a relative in childhood, causing her to develop some pretty bad habits as well as an eating disorder. She would binge eat constantly, getting to the point where she weighed over 250 pounds in school at a height of only 5'3". All of this led to her getting bullied in school as well, only causing her stress to snowball that much more. By the time she was in her young adulthood, Melissa had gotten an associate's degree in small business, but it wasn't really helping her find a job at all. By all accounts, she was miserable. Not only was she unemployed and over $25,000 in student debt, she still wasn't happy with herself at all. She decided that she needed to undergo some sort of big change in her life, and the first way she decided to do this was by losing weight. She started out by researching diet and nutrition on the internet, eventually leading to her losing about 100 pounds in 2 years, then even more over time. It was also around this time that she started dating a man named Cameron Walega, who went by the name SinSync online. He noted that she was very interested in fitness when they started dating, but said that another big change happened shortly after. In 2014, when she was about 22, Melissa went to a party with one of her friends. There, that friend explained to her what a camgirl was. Melissa hadn't really heard of it before, but found the idea of performing for men over a webcam for money to be somewhat appealing. After all, it seemed easy enough to do, and she still did need the money. She thought about trying it herself, but wanted to take some time to make sure that it was the right thing to do. She took less than 24 hours. The very next day, she decided to go for it. She decided to go by the screen name Two Thorned Rose, most likely because of her middle name being Rose. Despite the job sounding pretty easy, she came to see that being a camgirl wasn't all it was cracked up to be. In the beginning, she barely made any money from it at all. It took her a good couple of years to make an amount of money that she could consider to be sustainable. Her boyfriend came to notice that, as her job got more stable, her mental state went in quite the opposite direction. Melissa still didn't really seem to like being known as a camgirl too much. She tried all sorts of other things to make sure that she wasn't only that in the end. She began training in special effects and in makeup. In this endeavor, she decided to set up a profile on a website called Model Mayhem, which works as somewhat of a business card for models, photographers, and other people in that line of work. On Model Mayhem, she described herself as lingerie and all-around fetish model. I have a growing collection of lingerie, heels, and fetish gear to work with. I used to work more behind the camera as a special effects artist, so I'm comfortable with and knowledgeable when it comes to makeup and practical effects. I've been in front of a camera almost every day for 3 years. It was shortly after that Melissa began getting into cosplay as well. She started dressing up as various characters from all sorts of media. She dressed up as everything from Misty from Pokemon, to Daphne from Scooby-Doo, to Gwenpool from Marvel, and even Elvira. Most of this went straight to her account on Tumblr, on which she described her story as, "From fat girl to fit girl to camgirl." The cosplay didn't really stay as only cosplay for, well, even really a minute. It was really inseparable from her adult content from the get-go, with most of these outfits being used in her spicier content as well. Dressing up as these characters really did seem to rake in the views for Melissa, who started to walk away from the camgirl label and describe herself as more of a model/cosplayer. Actually, that's even what she listed as her job description on many different forums as well. As Melissa got more into blogging on Tumblr, her mental state only continued to decline even more rapidly. At the same time, she and her boyfriend decided to open up their own personal studio to other models for a small fee. Despite this being pretty effortless, Melissa started to complain that this kind of side gig was too stressful for her, only leading to arguments. After a while, her boyfriend decided that he couldn't stay with her any longer. Melissa, on the other hand, hit him with allegations of abuse and said that she left him because of that. We will come to see later, however, that Melissa's honesty levels are questionable. Either way, the two of them ended up parting ways as Melissa continued to pursue her line of work. She came to make a YouTube channel for her cosplay as well, but it didn't last very long. With the erotic nature of the content, her channel got blasted off the face of the earth pretty quickly. Somehow, Melissa didn't appear to understand why this was. Either way, she made her way over to Twitch, claiming that this would be her new platform. After all, Twitch has been known for allowing content that's not so clean. The phenomenon known as titty streamers was pretty big around that time, with many women pretty much just existing on camera with their boobs all oiled up. Given that, it seemed like a safer bet for the kind of content that Melissa was going for.
What's up everyone? If you know who I am, that's awesome! Welcome to my new channel. Since my other one on YouTube was deleted. If you don't know who I am, if you never heard of me or anything like that before, I am Two Thorn Rose. You can call me Rose. I'm a cam model, I'm an artist, I love fitness, I've lost 100 pounds. I like making videos about that and about my art and just about my daily life. And my channel over on YouTube where I was doing all of that stuff got deleted. They told me I was spam. They deleted my account for linking off site, and I'm just like, bitch, who the fuck doesn't link off site though?
Still though, she barely ended up using this account for anything. In fact, it doesn't appear that she used it for anything else at all after uploading the introduction video. Even though Melissa was only in her later 20s by this point, she began to notice something. That being that she was getting less popular as she got older. While she wasn't old at all by any means, it was no secret that the younger cam girls were always on the more popular end. With that, she tried to shake things up and make a name for herself in other ways. She started leaning more into the cosplay, even going to different cosplay competitions in an effort to try and make a name for herself. But eventually, she came to act in straight-up, regular adult content with different actors. In 2017, Melissa decided to get 2 surgeries. One of them was a corset trunkplasty, which is a surgical procedure described as removing excess skin in order to reshape the torso and abdomen area. Melissa had been pretty uncomfortable with all of the loose skin from her weight loss for quite some time. This left her with a pretty big, sizable scar down the front of her torso, which she would showcase from time to time but usually hid behind some sort of clothing. Afterwards, she got a thigh lift and tuck to deal with the excess skin there as well. After getting the surgery, she was feeling pretty good about herself. It was around that time that a man named Matthew Trussler moved to Florida. Matthew was a guy from Massachusetts who came out there for work. His friend described him as the most fun-loving, hard-working guy ever. He would put anybody in a good mood. Alone in a new area, Matthew decided to boot up Tinder and swipe around to see what kind of people he could meet. In April, he ended up connecting with Melissa on the app, and the two reportedly hit it off pretty quickly. Very, very quickly. In fact, they were engaged in less than 6 months. By the end of summer, they were even looking into buying a house together. That December, after less than a year of dating, they bought a house together on the 9800 block of White Barn in St. Petersburg. To the outside world, it seemed that the both of them had hit the dating app lottery, found their perfect match, and set up a cushy little, almost married life. They posted all sorts of pictures to Facebook together, showing them looking happier than ever in their new home with their 4 cats and a new dog. Online, people didn't really see anything negative between the two of them. Matthew even posted to social media showing how happy that he was with coming into this situation at a relatively young age. He wrote, "Quarter century later, I've got a mortgage, a pup, 4 fur babies, and a wonderful girl. I'm a happy man." Behind the scenes, though, as you may imagine, nothing was really all that perfect. Matthew's family quickly started to notice that Melissa was pulling him away from them. They said that it was pretty clear that she was doing all she could to isolate him from his family, saying that it was obviously a pretty toxic relationship. The neighbors also held very much the same opinion, saying that they heard a whole lot of shouting coming from the house. While the arguments were definitely mutual, they noted that, more often than not, Melissa would be the only one that they could hear shouting at full volume most of the time. Online, though, Melissa portrayed Matthew as the best thing that had ever come into her life. She even tried to garner sympathy for him by saying that her ex-boyfriend had gotten jealous and threatened him with a gun. It's unknown if that was even true, but Melissa did seem to enjoy the sympathy that it got her online. However, after a couple of years of this arguing, Matthew may have gotten his fill. On September 22, 2019, he took to Facebook to write an ominous post. He wrote, "Don't be a fool and blame others. Fight your own war." It's also noticeable that his relationship status was listed as single. And then, 1 month later, all hell would break loose. Melissa and Matthew got into one of their usual arguments, although the details as to why aren't really known. All we know is that Melissa was heard screaming and cursing at the top of her lungs. It was during this argument that Melissa completely snapped. She picked up a knife and stabbed and slashed at Matthew. She cut him across his upper right arm, resulting in a deep wound. He held up his arm to block her, leading to a gash there as well. She sliced him across the middle of the chest and finally stabbed him in the torso. Rather than calling an ambulance and getting herself in trouble, Melissa decided to let him bleed out there in the house. She waited for a whole 4 hours after stabbing him to call anyone. In that time, she both waited for him to die and tried coming up with a story to tell the police that would make sense. That was going to be tough, all things considered. There was nobody in the house aside from her. He had clearly been stabbed, and by now it had been hours since it happened. She was going to have to come up with something good. However, she was so blindly confident in herself that she felt she had the perfect story pretty quickly. She pulled Matthew's body out onto the back patio and called 911, pretending to have no knowledge whatsoever of what had happened to him. She said, "We had a lot of drinks last night and we went to bed drunk. I woke up this morning and he was bloody and outside this morning." When the authorities came out, they quickly realized that Matthew was already long gone. Knowing that they needed more information, they took Melissa down to the police station. The investigators interviewed her, hearing that she had quite the drunken night. Melissa told them that she and Matthew had been drinking heavily all night and that she had fallen asleep. She told them that she simply woke up and found Matthew dead there. She said she tried to give him CPR when she found him out on the patio. Given the obvious defensive wounds and the knife found on scene, it goes without saying that they didn't really believe her story. The investigators pretended to listen to her story intently, but the truth was that they were already on a lead. They had been tipped off to a security camera positioned nearby. One of the neighbors had a camera pointed in the direction of their house that, while it didn't record any video, did record the audio of the attack as it unfolded. The owner of that home played the audio to the investigator, clearly hearing a woman yelling, "So fucking die." It was unmistakable. A detective relayed this information back to the other investigators. When they heard the call in full, the details of the attack came to be much more apparent. Starting at 4:32 a.m., Melissa could be heard yelling, "You stay down," before glass was heard shattering. While Matthew's voice wasn't loud enough to be heard, Melissa's responses definitely could be. She was heard shouting, "So fucking die," and shortly after, "I hate you." It appeared that she had stabbed him at this time and he was lying on the ground. She started to yell, "Get up," over and over again. Slapping noises were then heard as she continued to shout at him. However, she seemed to have only taken him as being overly dramatic, despite having been stabbed. Again, she shouted, "So fucking arrogant, I hate you." She left the room for a couple of minutes before returning and telling him, "Go fuck yourself," as he bled out. She then demanded he get up once more, telling him, "Let's go." She then proceeded to curse at him more as she slapped him. It appears that this is when the gravity of the situation finally hit her. While a male voice was heard responding, it was too faint to hear. Melissa continued to argue. Then at 4:44, Melissa shouted no, followed by, "What did I do?" The investigators interviewing Melissa told her that they had turned up a video that clearly showed sounds of an argument coming from her home. She responded, "I have no memory of any argument." However, as the interrogation continued, Melissa started to change her story on the spot. No longer was this simply a mysterious drunken accident, it was now self-defense. She said that Matthew had woken her up while she was still drunk and that made her angry, leading to an argument. Despite Melissa admitting that she was the one to get angry, she said that Matthew then pulled a knife on her. She said that she grabbed it and got thrown down to the floor before he started to strangle her. Then she managed to grab the knife off the ground and stab him in the back. It was a story straight out of a movie. Oddly, she told the investigators, "If it was an accident, then I would have called 911 and not just let him die." All of this was more than enough evidence to give the police reason to arrest her. She was arrested on a charge of second-degree murder with a weapon and taken off to the local jail. Matthew's family heard the news soon enough and they were left in shock. Matthew's older brother later told the media, "She took Maddie long before she took him forever." When Matthew's autopsy was performed, it did nothing more than cement that Melissa's story didn't add up, especially the defensive wounds. The police were able to find his exact time of death by using a smartwatch that he was wearing that showed the exact time when it stopped detecting a heartbeat. While you might assume that this marked the end of Melissa's career, that is actually not the case at all. After being thrown into jail, she was able to post her bail and get out free for a while awaiting her trial. It was scheduled for December of 2021, which then gave her a few months to herself. She started off by purging the internet of a lot of her old Two Thorned Rose content, but not all of it. Rather than let her Camgirl career end there, she decided instead to rebrand. She started going by the name Vixen, usually as either Olivia Vixen or Livin' Vixen. She started acting in adult content with different men immediately. She made a new website, sold artwork, and posted videos walking a cat as if nothing had ever happened. However, it wasn't long before her trial came about and things definitely weren't looking good for her. Melissa was facing life in prison. At her trial, the prosecution had the easiest job of them all. They had the audio of the attack taking place and the fact that she waited hours before calling 911 for help. Oddly, Melissa's defense didn't even deny that the audio was real. Instead, they argued that the audio was edited to make it sound like she was screaming more loudly than she had been in reality, which was kind of a nothing argument. Melissa's attorney, a guy named John Trevana, was asked by the media about the audio recordings. He admitted that it was definitely Melissa's voice on the recording, but added, "We have several issues supporting why we believe that the jury should find Miss Turner not guilty. These issues include expert testimony from our audio/video expert Bruce Koenig that the Nest video/audio recording from a neighbor across the street was manipulated by prosecutors in select areas to amplify the volume to make it sound like Miss Turner was screaming much louder and the portions wherein the alleged victim is speaking are completely inaudible. Further, there are issues of self-defense and heat of passion." Melissa took to the stand herself, giving a crying monologue about what she said had happened on the night of Matthew's death. She, under oath, defended her new story. Melissa admitting to starting the fight, saying that she didn't imagine it would turn physical. She said that Matthew was drunk, woke her up, and started choking her. This time the story was even a little more dramatic than before, with her saying that he had thrown her across the counter before grabbing a knife and engaging in a life-and-death struggle. When it was asked how he ended up with so many slash wounds despite Melissa in her story only managing to stab him once in the back at the last minute while being strangled, she said she didn't know. She said she only recalled stabbing him once. The story then changed once again, with Melissa now saying that Matthew would often hallucinate and harm himself in the process. After hearing all of the evidence in a week-long trial, it only took the jury one day to deliberate and come to a decision. Given that she was pretty obviously guilty, all it came down to was what charge she would face. The options were second-degree murder, manslaughter, or aggravated battery. The jury only really had one question during their deliberation, that being, what is a clearer definition of depraved mind? This was because the charge of second-degree murder read as, the unlawful killing of a human being when perpetrated by an act imminently dangerous to another and evincing a depraved mind regardless of human life, although without any premeditated design to affect the death of any particular individual. When they got their answer, they found that she was guilty of the crime of second-degree murder. When they were asked to find if she did, quote, personally carry, display, use, threaten, or attempt to use a weapon, they said that she did. With that, the full charge was indeed second-degree murder with a weapon. And with that, all there was left to do was decide her sentencing. Melissa and her attorney relented, accepting that she was going to jail. However, they surprised the court by saying that they would be open to a 5-year sentence. The prosecution and, well, pretty much everybody else scoffed at the offer. Eventually, on March 18, 2022, it was decided that Melissa would spend the next 20.5 years of her life behind bars. While that was quadruple her proposed sentence of 5 years, many felt that it still wasn't nearly enough for what she had done. She was taken to the Lowell Correctional Institution in Marion County, Florida, to spend a good chunk of the remainder of her days. Her current release date is July 7, 2042. That means she will spend out her 30s and 40s behind bars, seeing a release just before she turns 50 years old. By then, her career as an adult actress and erotic cosplayer will probably not be viable anymore. Once again, thank you for watching my video. If you found it interesting, please give it a like, it really helps out in the algorithm, and feel free to subscribe if you want to see more content like this. These days, I have opened a merch store. There you can get yourself some cool Dire Trip t-shirts and cosplay as a channel on YouTube. If you want, go ahead and follow me on social media. If anything ever happened to the channel, or if you just need to get a hold of me, that's really the easiest way to do it. I really appreciate when people subscribe to my Patreon. There you can get videos early, ad-free, and uncensored. Channel memberships are up too, and you can get most of the same benefits there as well. Once again, this has been your host Kyle. Thank you, and good night.